Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home Coffee Brewing with April. My name is Patrick Rolfe, and as you can see already, we are not actually at home. We're outside, right outside of LA, like downtown LA, about a 30-minute drive up in the mountains, and we're meeting up with Brian and Clara that is brewing a lot of coffee outside pretty much. And we love to see how people are using the April Brewers outside as well. So come with me and let's brew some coffee. So we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, a little bit outside of LA-ish.
Yeah.
And we're gonna brew some coffee, right? Maybe first of all, what are we brewing? We do recognize this, or I recognize this, because I roasted this coffee. Ethiopian coffee, so natural processed, Regessa. You guys got it from a local shop?
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it from Kumquat.
Awesome.
It's our local April distributor.
Local April. So make sure you visit when you're in LA. And it's there's been a definite increase of like international roasters in Los Angeles and like in the US in general, right? Especially since after COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, the availability of roasters from abroad is impressive in LA now.
Yeah.
And I mean, Clara, being from Sweden, me living over there for a while, like our preference towards to tend that way, like tend to lean that way.
Yeah, and we have our favorites that we missed when we moved here. So
yeah, and we know a lot of the people who are roasting the coffees. So there's that connection that we appreciate.
What do you guys feel? Because like a little bit of a backstory here, right? So like all three of us have met before, and Brian actually used to come in like when I worked at Don Mateo, he would come in and criticize my coffee brewing, and like bring then American roasters, to Gothenburg every once in a while.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first. I think the first time I tried hard coffee, the first time I tried intelligentsia, like a lot of them, right? So we go a little bit back, right? And I'm a little bit curious about hearing about, let's say, then the transition between drinking a lot of Swedish coffee then, or like Scandinavian coffee, to drinking a lot of American coffee. What would you guys kind of say is the main difference?
well, I think first of all, maybe the darkness of the roast is a big one. I think light roast here is a little bit different than light roast in Scandinavia, for sure.
I think
that's a big one.
Yeah. Preference for like the type of coffees that are sourced as well, I think is different. I mean, we both really appreciate like very clean, bright, sweet coffees, and washed coffees is a big part of it. And especially in the U.S. in the last couple of years, like people have started to trend more towards the natural or experimental processing, and we appreciate like the clarity that we can still find from those Scandinavian roasters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we brew a lot of just black. We don't brew espresso at home, so it's all black filter coffee. That's our preference.
Yeah.
Which is cool, and I think that's I've seen that during the times I come over to the U.S. where I think part of the reason for, let's say, roast degree maybe in general approach is that I don't see so many black coffees being served in coffee shops. Right? There's a lot of other, let's say, vibes and styles of coffee, right? Which is all cool, but I think there's partially why there's less progressive on that side. Like I remember some of the ones you actually used to bring back in the days, and this was like 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Tasting much better back then than what they do now.
There's been a bit of a regression, I feel like. There was a period where like European, especially Scandinavian roasters influenced a lot of US roasters, and then I don't know if it was market demand or personal preference or a little of both, but there was sort of the development increased more than I think where it was. It was like people over sort of indexed on like this was too light, but then I think in some cases they went like a little bit more developed. So us having access to Scandinavian roasters, it just allows us to have that option.
Yeah, it gives a little bit more versatility, right?
Yeah.
Which I appreciate also. Cool. Let's get this started, right? Let's brew some coffee, right?
Coffee outside.
Yeah, so coffee outside, and that's because you guys do brew a lot of coffee outside, kind of. Yeah, that's kind of your thing.
Yeah, I mean, Clara being from Sweden, like we would camp a lot, hike a lot, have fika as a big part of that, and just like going on a walk in the woods and like bringing stuff, if we wanted to do it easy, we would just have a thermos of prepared coffee. But also sometimes it's just fun to brew it from scratch. And then during COVID, when all the cafes were closed, we started going on trips to different parts. We'd come up here to the mountains, or we'd even just go to a park, and we would just set up all our stuff and brew it outside. And it allows us to experience the fresh air, the sunshine, and just, the coffee's always good.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, especially here when it's so accessible as well, right? You have beautiful nature basically just on your doorstep, right? Yeah. So it's super cool to be able to come out and kind of do it. But obviously there's some challenges with brewing outdoor, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Or do you find it as easy as brewing at home, or like?
I think in some ways easier, because we don't bring necessarily everything that we would use at home. Like for instance, you don't have an electric grinder with you. We usually don't use a scale when we're outside.
I actually don't see a scale here, so we're not doing a scale today.
No.
How do we do it then when we don't have a scale?
So, I mean, we have obviously measured water with us.
Okay.
So we have this water bottle where you can see exactly how much it is in it.
Yep.
Of course, and then also the Jetboil that we use to boil the water has a little indicator of 450 grams, and we usually brew about 400.
Okay.
So 50 grams is for the wetting of the filter.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And what's interesting is like sometimes like we will brew coffee. It's like, this is better than anything we brewed at home in like 2 weeks.
Oh, sure.
And we don't know what, it's like, well, what did we do different? Like, part of it I think is the experience being outside, but it's like, did we dose it a little higher? Did we dose a little less? Like,
sure.
What is it that made that batch taste extra good?
Consistency is not the main component.
It's not the main component. No, sure.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's our everyday life is very much consistency and doing the same exactly measurements.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to not do that.
To not worry about it. Yeah. It's like putting the phone down for a little bit.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
So, and then we do like, we'll, depending on how many brews we plan on doing when we go out, if we're just going for a day, like we'll weigh the coffee at home and we'll store it like in the grinder so that it's just like ready to go.
Yeah. Which is actually really smart. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and the Nalgene is just like plastic, and it has like the 1 liter indicators, like broken down into milliliters and ounces. So it's you can get a pretty good measurement that way.
I never actually thought about that, but that makes perfect sense, actually. Of course.
And then our kettle, when we're outdoors, we use the Jetboil, which like there's a few brands that make variations of this, but it can boil half a liter of water in like 90 seconds. So it's super fast.
Quick, yeah. And you're pouring from that as well?
Yeah, so it has it comes with like a French press thing, as like you can see a little hole here.
Yeah, sure.
But it also has a little pour spout on the lid.
Yeah.
So we use it as a pour over kettle. It has a handle. It's not perfect by any means, but it gets the job done when we're out here. So
yeah, sure. And I guess a big part of kind of doing it outdoor is also just making sure that you can bring everything with you, right? You kind of want to bring as little as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a larger can. If you actually get the one size down gas can, it actually fits in here with all the components. So like the entire kettle is just like this size.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
we have a very excited guest with us here on the side as well, that is kind of hanging out. Ooh, I want to be a part of this.
And then you can see, I mean, you'll be able to tell when it starts boiling, but this is like heat sensitive, so it turns orange.
Ah, okay.
So when it gets to boiling, it changes colors.
That's awesome, though. One thing I haven't asked, what's the water actually? Like, where do you get the water from?
So we actually have an inline filter that we installed in our kitchen at home.
Okay.
So it's probably about this big of a filter, and we plug it into the city water line, so it only works for the cold water.
Yeah.
But it filters, it filters out chlorine, it filters out a lot of the sort of excess minerals that are in LA water. And
because LA water is not like, you wouldn't brew coffee with it.
Straight out of the tap.
No.
Like the coffee tastes
would you
really,
drink
really
it?
flat.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't done that so far, so I'm just double checking.
It's very good.
No, sure.
Yeah.
But it's technically not unhealthy.
No.
No, okay, sure. Yeah.
It's not
it just doesn't taste. Yeah, it just doesn't taste good.
Yeah. But you definitely need some kind of water filtration thing going on. Yeah. That's cool though. And what do we have? So there's a Comandante Grinder.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is our little.
Oh yeah, that's the.
bag. So
yeah.
It's actually from Comandante as well. So it fits like a little the filters.
Yeah.
It fits a little canister with coffee beans.
Cool.
And the grinder, of course, and a little hook to keep the grinder there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a good one to do.
I don't think I've actually used this version because this is like a newer version, right?
Yeah.
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 Like the trail grinder.
Yeah.
That's the color.
What's the difference between the two?
So the whole like body base is made out of it's like a polymer material, so you can feel. I mean, it's much lighter.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think in total, I did a weighing because the one I have at home, it has like, it has the glass canister. It's wood, it's metal, and I feel like it was like a 250 gram difference, like to our coffee kit when we weighed it out.
Okay, that's a big
It
difference.
was like significant.
Yeah.
It was very
If
significant.
you're going backpacking, that's kind of a
Sure.
big.
Yeah,
big weight
definitely.
difference.
And then it has a different burr set that I think it's called Tiger Shark.
The coffee's all
It's
set
smaller,
up
right?
in there.
Isn't it? Like the burst is smaller than the C40.
Yeah, it's smaller in diameter, but
Yeah.
the blades are, I think, more pronounced. It's like so it takes like slightly little more, or like more rotations, I think, to grind.
Okay, so it's a bit of a process, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
Which is okay, right?
yeah, I mean we're not going anywhere.
No,
We're not in a hurry.
it's like there's no rush. Well, what's the grind size you guys are using? Like, what would I guess it's a click thing as well.
Yeah, it's like
Do you know roughly?
19 about.
I think 19 probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so around 19. I'm not sure what that means on that grinder, but I guess we'll figure that out soon enough.
Well, yeah. So this is 19. I think this is like similar to the standard Comandante clicks. On our other Comandante at home, we have the red click, so you like double it basically.
Yeah, sure.
It has like twice the precision.
Yeah. That's true. Do you find, because you're obviously, I guess, brewing some American coffee as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you find brewing-wise, you would approach that a little bit different because of the different roast style, or do you feel you would brew kind of pretty much the same?
Well, it depends on the roaster. I mean, our like go-to American roaster is Say. Like we have a subscription, love their coffees,
Yeah.
and they definitely roast in a similar way to some of the Scandinavian roasters we buy. So like grind-wise, like dose-wise, like it's not a huge difference.
No, sure.
I mean, we're changing up our grind more depending on like the origin, I guess.
Yeah.
Like the type of bean.
Okay. And now we have like natural processed Ethiopian coffee. What would that mean? Would that be like a little bit finer than usual or coarser or?
I think for Ethiopian and natural, I would go just a little bit coarser.
Yep.
Than like if I brewed Colombian coffee.
Yeah.
We brew a lot of Colombian coffees too, so.
Yeah, okay.
But definitely for the Africans, I tend to go a little bit coarser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. I'm gonna top this off just a little bit more.
Oh yeah, like reheat it, yeah. And where are we? So like roast date on this, it's like we're not 2 months, but we're like a month and a half ish.
Yeah.
Almost.
6 weeks, I guess.
Yeah. Is that like usually when is it something you guys consider or just we brew it whenever?
No, we consider it definitely.
Yeah.
For me, and I think for you as well, we tend to not brew the coffees that are fresher.
Yeah.
Like in the same week of roast, I think it's like almost. I never do that.
Yeah, it becomes a little too fresh unless we're like out of coffee and like it's a
Yeah.
necessity.
Okay, so I need coffee, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah, okay.
I would
Yeah.
rather have like two or 3 weeks. I think it's nice.
Yeah, for sure.
That's for friends.
Agreed on that. I think resting time does make a big difference, especially for all kinds of coffee, but especially when you do slightly lighter stuff, you do want to make sure that it's rested, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're pre-wetting the filters.
Pre-wetting the filter, doing a little rinse.
And April Brewers. I assume like plastic because it makes sense to bring outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends on the trip and like what we're carrying. This is nice because it's plastic. We also have like one of those metal V60s, and it has like a loop handle, so we can carabiner it on the back of our backpack.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's nice as well because it's pretty indestructible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one of the beauties is, you know, going back the same with not using a scale is like we try not to be super particular about it.
Yeah.
But
how much coffee do we put in here now?
So this is 30 grams of coffee.
30 grams of coffee.
And we've got half a liter in there.
Yep. So 3,500, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Which you know, we'll be cutting it close with this thermos.
Okay. In what you're brewing into, sure.
I think our initial thermos thought was a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So
let's see what happens.
Let's go.
We'll figure that out eventually.
But that is again, like the beauty of brewing outside. Doesn't matter too much.
No, exactly. Would you have like a timer now, or you're going like
the timer when the water's
completely
done?
Freestyle? Yeah. When the water is done, we're gonna pour it.
When we're out of coffee,
that's awesome.
It's done.
I'm really curious about this.
So a little bloom cycle first.
Yeah. So just like wet all which also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, one of the nice things about this being not like a very precise kettle is like you get quite a lot of agitation when you're doing the initial pour as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah. You don't have to worry so much. And I mean, the key thing with bloom is to saturate. And I think people kind of forget that sometimes. It's really like make all of that coffee wet as quickly and as uniformly as possible.
Yeah. Making sure there's none of those like dry pockets down at the bottom.
Would you ever stir? I remember us having a conversation about stirring coffee like 12 years ago, and I'm pretty sure I stirred.
I did not stir. I do swirl now, though. Like,
okay,
well,
sure.
not with April. When we're using the V60, I'll swirl that. I'm always hesitant to like mess up the ridges of the filter on the flat bottom.
Oh, sure, yeah. What was like? Why pour now? Did you have any like indication you were looking for, or did it just like feel right to do?
I was counting in my head, usually around 30 seconds.
Okay.
I think that may have gone a little long, but also again, it's like once you see all the water sort of pass through, like there's like, I mean, when you've been doing pour over for so long, you're like, you know, it's about time to go again.
I heard it, yeah.
And I feel like that also changes depending on the freshness of the coffee.
Also true though. Yeah.
But
I think the altitude was all.
We found actually, depending on where we're camping, sometimes like if we're higher up in the mountains, like we're like, this was like a terrible grind because the water is just coming through super slow. And I don't know the science behind how or why the altitude may be affecting it, but I'm pretty sure it is, you know. Oh,
sure. And I mean, you also, I guess, have different boiling points on the water as well, which is a little bit confusing.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's one of the things, I think that's partly why we don't get too finicky over it is like without, you know, we use a fellow at home, so it's like we know exactly what the temperature of the water is, and you know, we've got our scale, and like up here, it's nice to just like we're gonna pour hot water over these coffee grinds, and it's gonna taste great because we're sitting out here, and you know, we use good water, we use good coffee, we use a good grinder, all of the little details, of course, like you know, we're not gonna get a competition brew out here, but it's gonna be good. You know, we've experimented with like the instant coffees or the like little pour over packets, and even this style without a scale, without a timer, it's going to taste better than those things because the coffee's fresh. So.
But then of course we always have like different levels of what we bring depending on what we're doing.
Yeah,
like if we're gonna go on like a really big backpacking trip, we might even like pre-grind the coffee and pack little sackets of the pre-ground coffee.
Yeah, sure.
But we do always bring some sort of brewing device.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we've ever brought just instant coffee.
No.
Also, like the instant coffee thing, like I have a hard time getting convinced over that. Like you can make instant coffee that tastes better than the current instant coffee for sure, but it is still instant coffee, and it's not going to be like extracting coffee twice. It's not going to be as good as extracting it once.
I think for instant, like I think that's super nice if you're on an airplane or like in a hotel or something.
Yeah.
Then it's
so now you're lifting it off here.
Yeah. So
is that because of the volume maybe, or
is that
because
it's a little bit of that. So there was maybe 50 grams of water left. But this thermos is a little small, so instead of having the coffee overflow, it probably could have fit in here, but then it would have been a pain to pour.
It would be a pain to pour. Yeah, that's true.
So, and then we use these kolsas, Swedish, Finnish style.
Yeah, so that's like a Scandinavian outdoor cup.
Yeah,
I would say. Yeah.
And I mean, I remember camping in like northern Sweden and Norway, and like you would use these. You would just scoop water from the river and like drink water, and would never do that here. But they make really nice coffee cups.
Yeah, don't do that in the LA River.
No, I mean don't do that in most places in the world, maybe. But you can actually do it kind of in
the first cup.
Well, up in the Alpine Lakes, I think you could.
Okay,
possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. We have another device actually. We depending on where we're camping, it's kind of like an AeroPress, but it has a big filter on it. Yeah. So you can take water from a creek or lake and you press down and it forces the water through the filter and it removes 99.9% of bacteria.
Okay.
And so when we go camping or hiking places where there's like a river or stream, we've actually brewed coffee without that water before too, just like for that experience.
But that's like, that makes the coffee taste so good.
Yeah, especially higher up like the Alpine Lakes.
Okay.
Because I think the water is like pretty minerally up there.
Yeah, sure.
It's ice cold.
Yeah, it's glacier water.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a secret for like future US Brewers Cup competitors.
Definitely.
That's how you hack the water
for 5 hours up the mountain.
It's also a good story though. Yeah. It's like I did all of this just to serve you a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I filled my 10-liter pack of water, hiked it down the mountain.
Walked down. So we so I'm always asking people because I'm kind of curious, right? So at April we write like flavor notes on our packaging. It's like raspberry, florals, and citrus here. How much are you guys concerned with like flavor notes from coffee roasteries? Like, is that something you like consider when you buy the coffees? Or I mean, you obviously know quite a lot about coffee, so it's maybe it's less relevant. You're also a designer, so I'm curious what you think from like a design perspective. Because I've seen a few US roasters now that are not writing flavor notes at all on the packaging.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the roaster because some I think can be more, I've had their coffee and I'm like, I know that their taste notes are more on target. Whereas sometimes it just feels like marketing, like people are putting things that sound like it would be attractive and then you taste the coffee and it's like,
fair point though.
I don't know if I get that.
Yeah.
So it depends, but they serve as like a broad guide. So it's like if this says that it's like, it's acidic or it's citric or it's berry, I'm like, okay, well, like I'm probably gonna like that.
Yeah.
If it says like it's nougat or nutty or smoky or toffee, like generally,
would you put that as a flavor note?
Oh,
maybe in the US.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
smoky coffee.
None of the roasters that we buy from, but like, people who enjoy a darker coffee,
smoky
like
and burnt,
smoky tobacco, like those are taste notes that you.
I guess it's a category, right?
Yeah, it's a vibe.
Some people like it, but
which is perfectly okay to do. Like no disrespect
coffee.
here. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, but just so that's sort of how we use the taste notes. It's like for a range. Like we prefer like the brighter, fruitier coffees, and not so much the less acidic, like nougat, peanut, chocolate. Like occasionally those are good, especially like first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
But generally we use them as a broad guide, I guess. But if I have a coffee and I'm like, oh, this says, black currant and I don't taste black currant, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Okay, sure. So you don't feel like it's they're cheating you or.
No.
Fair enough.
Because I think, if you tasted black currant when you tasted his coffee, fine.
Sure.
I don't taste it, but
yeah.
I think it can also depending on the roast, because like you can taste things when you're cupping a coffee versus when you're brewing it. Like they can taste different. There are certain notes that only show up with certain brew methods. So, sometimes you have to consider that.
Did she disappear now?
She's like hiding.
No, I see.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's up to the roaster. I think that's when you cannot divide who's really doing a good job and who's maybe just doing the basic bare minimum.
Sure.
It's like they have QC the coffee through both cupping and brewing and how people would actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
Rather than just a cupping, because most people won't do a cupping at home.
True. So some people do. I realize in these like videos, like some people take homebrewing to like
That's
a whole
really
new
good.
level, right?
Yeah.
But true, fair enough. Like it's. Do you guys have any recommendation? I mean, a bit of a random question, but let's say people that are trying to move into buying specialty coffee beans or like higher quality stuff, like what's a good kind of entry level, right? Is there like any specific roaster you guys would maybe recommend? I'm sure there's a bunch of US people that will watch this as well. But what's the good things to look for? Is it like a certain varietal, a processing, a country even that could be like a good start?
I mean, country of, I think Colombian coffees are beautiful. Of course, I work for a roastery, Brian and Clara, who specializes in Colombian coffee.
Ah, okay, I didn't know.
And I think you can get such a big variety of flavors and varieties,
Sure.
all different processes.
Yeah.
So that's a good country to start if you want to like try coffee for the first time. That's like specialty.
Yeah.
And then like move over to like Ethiopia, because nothing would taste like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite specific. That's
Yeah.
true. What do we think this tastes like?
All right, so taste descriptors. It's very sweet. It's a very sweet coffee. I'm almost wondering, probably because I pulled the water, like it feels a little bit stronger brew. Like there's like a
sure.
body to it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flavor, good flavor, but I think that almost enhances the sweetness.
Yeah. It's becoming more intense, right? And that's for sure like a ratio thing in the end, right?
Yeah. Like I almost get, it's like a raisin sweetness. And then there's definitely like a blackberry, black currant. There's I get like a blue, like citric berry type sort of acidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really tasty.
Yeah, I mean, it also fits, like it just fits the vibe, for example. But I think it's a little bit what you guys said before as well. Like, it's all also about the scenery. Most things, to be fair, would taste quite good here. One thing I do want to ask about, which I think for me makes sense for like outdoor brewing, is would you guys ever like taste it and do any kind of dilutions afterwards? Because we've seen that a lot in these videos, and I'm thinking outdoor, when you don't have all the perfect measurements, that would make a lot of sense to do.
Yeah, so we've started alternating just out of ease. Like I think I mentioned, like depending on the type of trip, we'll bring different gear. So if we're trying to pack like lighter or easier, we have like an AeroPress Go, and it all collapses down really easily. But just so that we can get the volume we want in the morning, like we'll do a dilution style brew,
Okay.
and then that way, we're able to get a full thermos of coffee from a very little amount of water, and it's like, oh, this one's we brewed it a little too strong. It's 6:30 in the morning. It's cold out, so we'll dilute it a little bit, and it's I think very rare where we've brewed a coffee where we're like, this was very bad, we're gonna pour it out and we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, I think that happened.
But I think, you guys have, you mentioned it also in the video, and I think there's something that people tend to forget sometimes, right? But if all the basic ingredients you're using are good, like use solid water, use well roasted coffee, high grade beans, good grinder, like it doesn't have to be much more complicated. A lot of the people go wrong because of the basics, I think, rather than the actual execution. Then again, I mean, as you said, like you're not competing in a world championship with this, right? Or some people do for sure, but it's it's a different scenery.
But yeah, I mean, if you had if we had like a pickup truck with a full outdoor kitchen and like a pour over kettle and a scale, but we were using a bad coffee, like this tastes way better.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I would bet every time that this coffee tastes better.
Sure.
So, yeah, it comes down to like using the right ingredients, and then whatever gear that we end up using, the impact is far smaller than if we were to use just a bad coffee.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is your coffee, like taste notes wise, like how does it
how it correlates. I think flavor-wise, I'm gonna say it correlates quite well with what we've been experiencing. Like you're mentioning this kind of, let's say, dark berry vibe to it, which traditionally the coffee wouldn't have as much. That definitely comes out of the strength of the brew, as you kind of referenced as well. Yeah. It would be also just because at April I brew stuff really light in general, right? So we get a slightly different perspective on it. But at the same time, I think everything comes out very kind of well proportioned. And you taste what coffee it is. That's the most important thing, right? Yeah. Also for me, when I travel around, it's like part of why this is also interesting. We don't always have April coffees in the videos, but it's, it's really interesting to taste your own coffee, whether it's a coffee shop or someone else brewing, and just see what's the experience people are actually getting with the coffee, right? Because you don't know, we roast and pack and ship coffees all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, our water's different. Our water's different.
Oh, sure.
Our method is, probably different.
I mean, definitely. I haven't brewed coffee like this in I think, ever.
The vessel, like drinking out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that adds.
Also, for me, this is like childhood, right? Yeah. So I think that also makes it more, like it becomes very comforting in a way, which I really appreciate, Yeah. And you kind of just want to sit and drink coffee the whole afternoon. Yeah. It's a different vibe, right?
Yeah. Well, another thing, so when we do go camping, like usually the night before we're having wine and we're using these cups. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of give them a rinse. Yeah. And then the next morning, sometimes we forget to rinse them, but so there's always
like
there's a little
wine
bit of
barrel coffee
taste
vibe
to it. So yeah, I mean
the wine barrel process without doing the wine barrel.
I mean that's becoming a thing now for sure. Definitely, and we can make a long video about that as well, but we shouldn't. But awesome. I mean, I think to sum it up a little bit, so we've been running on roughly 30 grams of coffee, because that's measured at home and then kind of brought in, so it's like easy to grind. We're running with a Comandante 19 clicks-ish, you said. And then we're pushing about 500 grams of brewing water. Obviously now a little bit less because of the vessel we were brewing into, so we cut off the brew, which we've seen a lot actually. It's kind of a thing, especially when I travel to Asian countries. Like a lot of them just intentionally kind of cut off the brews. That's kind of a thing. Brew time, we don't really know. Yeah. Do we have something you normally would aim for if you did know, or?
Yeah, for this like sort of volume ratio, like, I mean, when we're brewing at home, when we're doing a half a liter, like about 3 minutes, depending on the coffee, a lot of times we'll do like a 400 milliliter brew. And it's more like 240, something like that, 240, 245-ish. For 500 grams, closer to like 3 minutes probably. But that's also what's interesting when we brew out here like this, is we get to taste this coffee this way, and then when we go home and we have all the proper gear, to like dial it in, and it's, being able to taste it in those two different ways is always interesting too. You get to compare.
It gives a bit more diversity and like more perspectives on the same coffee as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Awesome. I think it's a good time to kind of cut it off, right? So thank you for both of you. All three of you actually.
Glad we could show you the mountains above LA. Like not a lot of people who come to LA have seen this, and it's so close.
And it also looks amazing. I told them when we were driving up here, like you get this origin trip vibe to it almost, right? And it's amazing to be in a city and just be able to kind of jump out here, right? So definitely a recommendation if you ever come to LA. Awesome. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you guys for watching as always. Do the subscription thing, the comment thing, the Patreon thing, because I say it all the time. It's always really helpful. And yeah, with that, just thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.
Have a good day.
We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.